I'm the one who signed off on payroll, and let me tell you, the decision to cut bonuses for interns wasn't easy. It's a choice that still haunts me. Did I betray the very people I was supposed to support, or was I just following orders in a corporate machine? Stick around as I unravel the truth behind that call, the pressure from above, and the fallout that changed how I see justice in the workplace. I still remember the day I got the email. It was late, around 9 p.m., and I was sifting through spreadsheets in my cramped office. The subject line read, "Urgent, payroll approval." My stomach sank. As the HR manager, I'd seen my fair share of tough calls, but this one felt different. The email was from the CFO, a man known for his cold, calculated decisions. He wanted me to approve the payroll for the quarter, but there was a catch. The interns, our hardest-working, least-paid staff, weren't getting their promised bonuses. I stared at the screen, my cursor hovering over the Approve button. My team had worked tirelessly to secure those bonuses. They were a lifeline for kids barely scraping by. But the directive was clear: no bonuses. I felt a knot tighten in my chest. Was this really the company I'd signed up for? I took a deep breath and clicked Approve. That moment still lingers in my mind. The interns weren't just names on a payroll sheet. They were bright, ambitious kids, some still in college, others fresh graduates. They'd come to our company with stars in their eyes, believing in the promise of opportunity. I'd personally recruited most of them, sat through their interviews, heard their dreams. I'd promised them fair compensation, including a small bonus for hitting project deadlines. It wasn't much, but for them, it meant rent, groceries, or a chance to pay off student loans. Now, I was the one pulling that rug out from under them. The CFO's email didn't explain why, just a vague mention of budget constraints. I wanted to push back, to demand answers, but I knew the corporate hierarchy. My voice felt small, drowned out by the weight of executive orders. Still, I couldn't shake the guilt. The next morning, I walked into the office bracing myself. The interns worked on the third floor, in a shared space filled with laughter and energy. I avoided that floor like the plague. I didn't want to face their questions, their disappointed stares. Instead, I hid behind emails, scheduling meetings to keep myself busy. But the truth was, I couldn't escape the decision I'd made. I kept replaying the moment I clicked Approve. Could I have fought harder? Should I have called the CFO and demanded an explanation? My colleagues noticed my mood. They asked if I was okay. I forced a smile, said it was just a long night. But inside, I was wrestling with the reality of my role. I was complicit in a system that valued profit over people. A week later, the news broke to the interns. I wasn't there when they found out, but I heard about it. One of the team leads, Sarah, sent me a message. They're crushed. Some interns had already spent their expected bonuses, counting on that money for essentials. Others felt betrayed, like the company had lied to them. I wanted to explain, to tell them it wasn't my decision, but how could I? I was the one who signed off. I was the face of HR, the person they trusted. I spent that day in meetings, pretending everything was fine, but my mind was elsewhere. I kept imagining their faces, their disappointment. The corporate machine kept turning, but I felt like I was stuck, unable to move past my role in this. The CFO called me into his office the next day. He was all smiles, congratulating me on keeping things smooth. Smooth? I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask him how he could justify cutting bonuses for the lowest-paid workers while executives flew to conferences in private jets. But I didn't. I nodded, thanked him, and left. I felt like a coward. Back at my desk, I pulled up the payroll files again, staring at the numbers. The interns' bonuses totaled less than $50,000, a drop in the bucket for a company pulling in millions. I started drafting an email to the CFO, outlining why the bonuses mattered. But every time I tried to hit send, fear stopped me. What if I lost my job? What if I was labeled a troublemaker? The interns started talking among themselves. I heard whispers of a walkout, of filing complaints with HR. Ironic, since I was HR. I couldn't blame them. They'd been promised something, and we'd failed to deliver. I met with Sarah, the team lead, to get a sense of the mood. She was blunt. They feel like they're disposable. That hit me hard. I'd always prided myself on building a supportive culture, but this decision undermined everything I stood for. I promised Sarah I'd look into it, but what could I do? The payroll was already approved, the budget set. Still, I couldn't let it go. I started digging into the company's financials, looking for a way to reverse the decision. Maybe there was a loophole, a surplus somewhere. My research led me to a startling discovery. The company wasn't struggling financially, not even close. We just closed a major deal, bringing in record profits. The budget constraints excuse was a lie. The money for the interns' bonuses was there. It had just been redirected. I found a line item in the budget labeled Executive Incentives. It was millions of dollars, allocated for senior leadership bonuses. My blood boiled. The interns, who worked 12-hour days, got nothing, while executives pocketed six figures for performance. I wanted to confront the CFO, but I knew I needed evidence. I saved screenshots, downloaded reports, and built a case. This wasn't just about the interns anymore. It was about fairness. I reached out to a colleague in finance, someone I trusted. Her name was Lisa, and she'd been with the company longer than me. I showed her the numbers, explained the situation. She wasn't surprised. "This is how it works," she said. "The top takes care of the top." Her cynicism shook me, but it also fueled my resolve. I wasn't going to let this slide. I drafted a proposal to reinstate the interns' bonuses, using the financial data I'd found. It was risky. Going against the CFO could end my career, but I couldn't live with myself if I stayed silent. I sent the proposal to my direct supervisor, hoping she'd back me up. Her response was curt. "Stay in your lane." That phrase, "stay in your lane," echoed in my head for days. It was a warning, a reminder of my place in the corporate hierarchy. But I couldn't unsee the numbers. I couldn't unhear the interns' disappointment. I started reaching out to other managers, testing the waters. Most were sympathetic but unwilling to stick their necks out. "It's not our fight," one said. I understood their fear. Jobs were hard to come by, and nobody wanted to rock the boat. But I kept thinking about the interns, about their trust in me. I decided to take a chance. I scheduled a meeting with the CFO and prepared my case. If I was going down, I'd go down fighting. The meeting was a disaster. The CFO barely looked at my proposal. He leaned back in his chair, smirking, and said, "This is above your pay grade." I pushed back, citing the financials, the interns' contributions. He cut me off, saying the decision was final. I left his office feeling defeated but not done. I knew I couldn't change the system alone, but I could make noise. I started documenting everything: emails, budget reports, meeting notes. If the company wouldn't listen, maybe someone else would. I wasn't sure who yet, but I was determined to find a way to make this right. The interns' morale plummeted. Projects slowed, and the energy on the third floor vanished. I heard some were looking for other jobs, feeling betrayed by the company. I couldn't blame them, but it broke my heart. I'd recruited them with promises of growth, of fairness. Now I was part of the system that let them down. I started meeting with them one-on-one, trying to rebuild trust. They were honest, angry, hurt, but willing to talk. I couldn't promise bonuses, but I promised to listen. It wasn't enough, but it was a start. I took their feedback to heart, vowing to find a way to make things right. I went back to the financials, looking for any leverage. I found a small discretionary fund, one the CFO hadn't touched. It wasn't much, but it could cover half the interns' bonuses. I drafted a new proposal, this time pitching it to the CEO directly. Bypassing the CFO was a gamble, but I was desperate. I spent hours perfecting the email, attaching every piece of evidence I had. The interns deserved this, I wrote. They were the future of the company. I hit send and waited, my heart pounding. Hours later, I got a response, "We'll discuss this at the next board meeting." It wasn't a yes, but it wasn't a no. The waiting was torture. I threw myself into work, trying to distract myself from the uncertainty. But every time I passed the third floor, I felt a pang of guilt. The interns were still showing up, still working hard, but the spark was gone. I kept thinking about what Lisa had said, "The top takes care of the top." Was I naive to think I could change that? I started researching whistleblower protections, just in case. If the board rejected my proposal, I'd have to decide how far I was willing to go. Exposing the budget discrepancies could cost me my job, but staying silent felt like a betrayal. The board meeting came and went. I wasn't invited, of course. I was too low on the totem pole. But I got an email from the CEO's assistant. My proposal was under review. It felt like a brush-off, but I clung to hope. Meanwhile, the interns were getting restless. One of them, a bright kid named Marcus, confronted me in the break room. "Why should we stay?" he asked. I didn't have a good answer. I mumbled something about long-term opportunities, but it felt hollow. Marcus deserved better. They all did. I went back to my desk and started drafting a new plan, one that didn't rely on the board's approval. My new plan was risky but straightforward. I'd use my own budget. As HR manager, I had a small discretionary fund for team-building activities. It wasn't enough to cover the bonuses, but it could fund a stipend program for the interns. I worked late into the night, crunching numbers, reallocating funds. I'd have to cancel a few company events, but it was worth it. I presented the idea to my team, expecting pushback. To my surprise, they were on board. "It's about time we did something," Sarah said. For the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe I could make a difference, even if it was small. Implementing the stipend program wasn't easy. I had to navigate corporate red tape, justify every dollar spent. The CFO caught wind of it and called me in again. "You're overstepping," he said, his tone icy. I held my ground, explaining that the stipends came from my budget, not his. He didn't like it, but he couldn't stop me, not without drawing attention to his own decisions. I left his office feeling a mix of fear and triumph. I was finally doing something, taking a stand. But I knew it wasn't enough. The interns deserved their full bonuses, not a consolation prize. The stipend program rolled out quietly. I didn't want to make a big announcement and risk the CFO's wrath. Instead, I met with the interns individually, explaining the new funds. They were grateful, but I could see the lingering disappointment in their eyes. The stipends helped, but they weren't the bonuses they'd been promised. I kept pushing for the board to reconsider, sending follow-up emails, citing the interns' contributions. I even got a few managers to sign a letter of support. But the board remained silent, and I started to lose hope. The system was rigged, and I was just one person. Then, something unexpected happened. Marcus, the intern who'd confronted me, started a petition. He circulated it among the interns, demanding transparency about the bonus cuts. It gained traction fast, with dozens of signatures in a day. I was torn, proud of their initiative, but worried about the fallout. If the petition reached the executives, it could escalate things. I met with Marcus, trying to understand his plan. He was calm but resolute. "We're not invisible," he said. "We deserve answers." I admired his courage, but I warned him about the risks. He just shrugged. "What's the worst they can do? Fire us." The petition reached the CFO's desk. He was furious, calling it insubordination. He demanded I identify the ringleaders. I refused, saying it was a group effort. He didn't buy it, but I held firm. I wasn't going to throw Marcus under the bus. Instead, I offered to mediate, to sit down with the interns and hear them out. The CFO reluctantly agreed, probably to save face. The meeting was tense, interns on one side, executives on the other. I did my best to keep things civil, but the anger was palpable. The interns wanted answers, and the executives weren't giving them. After the meeting, I was exhausted. I'd spent hours playing referee, trying to bridge a gap that felt impossible. The executives promised to review the bonus issue again, but it felt like lip service. I went home that night and cried. I felt like I'd failed everyone, the interns, myself, even the company I'd once believed in. But giving up wasn't an option. I started looking outside the company for help. I reached out to a labor rights group, anonymously, to ask about next steps. They suggested going public, but I wasn't ready for that. Not yet. I needed more time, more evidence. The weeks that followed were a blur. The interns kept working, but the tension was thick. I kept pushing for the bonuses, sending emails, making calls. I even got a meeting with a board member, a rare win. She was sympathetic but non-committal, saying the budget was complicated. I wanted to scream that it wasn't complicated, it was a choice. Instead, I thanked her and left. Back at my desk, I kept digging, looking for more leverage. I found another budget discrepancy, this time tied to a consulting firm we'd hired. Millions of dollars for vague strategic advice, while interns got nothing. I decided to take a bigger risk. I leaked the budget details to Marcus, anonymously. I knew it was dangerous, but I trusted him to handle it carefully. He did. The interns used the information to strengthen their petition, adding specific demands about budget transparency. The petition started circulating beyond the company, picking up attention on social media. I watched from the sidelines, nervous but proud. The interns were finding their voice, and I'd helped, even if no one knew it. But the pressure was mounting. The CFO called me in again, asking if I'd heard anything about the leaks. I played dumb, my heart racing. The social media buzz caught the attention of a local news outlet. They reached out to the company for comment, and suddenly, the executives were scrambling. I was called into an emergency meeting with the CEO, CFO, and other senior leaders. They wanted to know how this had spiraled out of control. I stayed calm, suggesting we reinstate the bonuses to defuse the situation. To my shock, the CEO agreed, but only partially. They'd reinstate half the bonuses, citing public perception. It wasn't enough, but it was a start. I left the meeting feeling a mix of relief and frustration. The partial bonuses were announced the next day. The interns were skeptical but grateful. I met with them to explain, taking full responsibility for my role in the initial decision. Some forgave me, others didn't. I understood. Trust, once broken, is hard to rebuild. I kept working on the stipend program, trying to make it sustainable. I also started documenting the entire saga, every email, every meeting, every decision. If things went south, I wanted a record. I wasn't sure what I'd do with it, but it felt important to have. The news coverage died down, but the interns' petition had left a mark. Other departments started asking questions about budget transparency. The CFO was under scrutiny, and I could tell he was rattled. I kept my head down, focusing on my work, but I felt a shift. People were talking, questioning the status quo. I wasn't the only one frustrated with the system anymore. I started mentoring Marcus and a few other interns, helping them navigate the corporate world. They were resilient, determined to make change. I admired their courage. It reminded me of who I wanted to be. Months later, I got an unexpected call from the labor rights group. They'd been following the story and wanted to know if I'd share my perspective anonymously. I hesitated. Going public could end my career, but staying silent felt like giving up. I agreed to talk, but only off the record. I shared the budget discrepancies, the executive bonuses, the whole story. They were shocked but not surprised. This happens everywhere, they said. That made me angry. It shouldn't happen anywhere. I started thinking about what corporate justice really meant, not just for the interns, but for everyone. The labor rights group published a report, citing anonymous sources at our company. It didn't name me, but the details were damning. The story gained traction, and suddenly, the executives were on the defensive. The CEO announced a review of compensation practices, a clear attempt to save face. I didn't trust it, but it was progress. The interns got their full bonuses reinstated, a small victory. I felt a weight lift, but I knew the fight wasn't over. The system was still broken, and I was still part of it. I had to decide, stay and keep pushing, or walk away. I chose to stay. Leaving felt like abandoning the interns, my team, and the small changes we'd started. But I wasn't the same person anymore. I'd seen the underbelly of corporate greed, and I couldn't unsee it. I started advocating more openly, pushing for transparency, for fairness. I mentored more interns, helped them build skills to navigate the system. I also kept documenting, building a case for systemic change. The CFO never confronted me directly, but I knew he suspected me. I didn't care. I was done staying in my lane. Looking back, I'm not sure I did enough. The interns got their bonuses, but the bigger issues, executive excess, budget secrecy, persisted. I learned that corporate justice is a marathon, not a sprint. Every small win matters, but it's never the whole battle. I think about the interns every day, about their dreams, their resilience. They taught me as much as I taught them. I'm still here, still fighting, still trying to make this company better. Some days, it feels impossible. But then I remember Marcus's words, "We're not invisible." Neither am I. This experience changed me. It showed me the power of speaking up, of standing with those who have less. I'm not a hero. I made mistakes, stayed silent too long. But I'm learning, growing, and trying to do better. Corporate justice isn't just about bonuses or budgets. It's about people, about fairness, about doing what's right even when it's hard. I'm still navigating this world, still finding my voice. But I know one thing. I'll never approve a payroll that betrays the people who trust me again. That's my promise, to them and to myself. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever felt caught in a system that prioritizes profit over people, I'd love for you to join me on this journey. Subscribe to my channel for more stories about navigating the corporate world, fighting for fairness, and finding your voice. Hit that subscribe button, and let's keep this conversation going. Together, we can push for a workplace that values everyone.